Beep, beep, beep. Brian Melksham, how the devil are you? Alright, Graham Beaver, Dave Wilmot, Magic, Gabrielle. All the legends are coming on tonight. I thought I might get 5 people on here. Good news, boys. We're all back match fishing today. Whenever we get the chance, when the fisheries decide we can go again, of course. But that's good news, isn't it, eh? Biggest piss taker in the Thatcher's team has just joined, Nathaniel Johnson. Hi, Steve. Behave, Nat. Hello, Sean. Long time no see, mate. Mr. Ollis. Then blast from the past, Mark Brennan, old teammate of mine. How you doing, Mark? Hope you're well. Cheers. I thought after Gary Etheridge's video I'd get a glass myself, but Darren Gilman, my old work colleague and teammate. Yeah, long time no see, Graham. I hope you're well. I have seen you on Facebook. Looking good. Don't mention fishing in Northern Ireland, Graham, please. Simon James, hello. Glenn Daly, technology hasn't beaten you. You've joined, well done. Evening, Clive. Good, glad to hear it, Mark. Mark Tanner, otherwise known by his friends as Spanner, has joined. I imagine there's a lot of people joining and thinking this isn't an England international and they're switching off again. So we'll see how many we get staying on here. It was very kind of Clive to ask me to talk, which I was happy to do. But following the footsteps of some top anglers on here, like Gary Etheridge, who's just joined. I'll give it a minute or so, Clive said, to make sure that a couple of minutes to make sure that people get the chance to join. Hi Dave, Mr. Haynes. Hi Gary. It's a strange sensation. Anybody who hasn't done this, and I listened to Gary Etheridge, Evening Lee. It's very strange talking and looking at yourself and not hearing anything back. Obviously, most times we talk to each other, we get a conversation going. So this is all me talking, and hopefully not boring you to death and getting some questions. Evening, Mark. Mr. Nichols. Yes, Lee, I did get dressed. I put a t-shirt on. It was too hot today to wear anything. And yeah, try my best, Graham. Evening, Mr. Squires. Russ Pecker. Evening. Hello, Warren. Hope you're doing all right in lockdown, and everybody else. Mr. Tocknell, Matt Challenger, one of my teammates and owner of Scott Tackle, where I tend to get my bait these days and all my bits and bobs. Thank you, owner. Hi, John. I hope you're enjoying yourself back out on the Gloucester Canal. Andy Guard promised he'd come on and have a chat. Hello, Andy. Silver's Angler Supreme. I had a shave for you guys as well. It's about time it came off. It gets a bit itchy, doesn't it? It does for me anyway. Right, I think we'll make a start if that's okay. I think 3 minutes is gone. I'm just going to start off. Clive's asked me to talk about how I got into fishing and when how I got into match fishing, really. So, for those that don't know, I grew up. I don't. The cider was drank the weekend. It was bank holiday. It all went. Russ, sorry, I drank all the cider. I grew up on a farm, and it was in Willsbridge, and it was very close to the Bristol Avon and a farm called Londonderry Farm, Jack White's, Evelyn Graham, and I was really lucky that my parents were sort of interested in fishing. They didn't have a clue, but they were interested, and they had a few friends who liked fishing. And behind the farm there was a mill pond, and there was plenty of fish in there. Although as a kid I wasn't allowed to go around there; it was too dangerous. But I could mess around in the stream that led into the pond. But I saw other people fishing it, and quite amazed at the fish that they were catching in there. Even Mr. Carty, and yeah, so there was just something in me straight away seeing these fish, and it's just, for me, it was like, I don't know why, but at a young age you'd look at a stream or a pond, you couldn't really see in there, and you didn't know what was underneath it, and you could look at the birds in the sky and the trees and things, you can see the wildlife, but you can't see the fish. So the only way you could see them was to catch them. Even in Steve Wynn, City fan, I'll be polite, Graham Potter. And hi James, and so it kind of began there, and that's just something, I was very, very young, and just used to mess around. My mum bought me a 6-foot catalogue rod, which was rubbish, but I could catch stone loach and miller's thumb, things like that, and the odd minnow in the pond. And but as I got older, the pond was destroyed by the council because of all the houses that had been built. Everything was destroyed, and the stream was trashed. There was nothing in it. It was dead. And the only way I could go fishing then was if I went down to the River Avon. And my birds, sorry Andy, you bugger, you put me off. And my parents wouldn't let me go down there first of all until I was old enough to go down there on my own. And then you soon find out, even when you're young, you've got a 6-foot rod, you can't cast very far, and at Londonderry Farm there's a concrete wharf, and you're probably about 15 foot above the water, so I couldn't get a line off the reel to land in there. So eventually I got a bit better, I will say a bit better gear. I got a 13-foot rod, which was probably a beach cast, so that's what everyone nicknamed it. And I was able to fish and cast out, had a better reel. It was all rubbish gear still, but you start to get a few eels on the ledger. The rod was a ledger rod, it was a float rod, it was whatever it was. I remember catching a pike down on the river once on homemade maggots. On the farm I killed a couple of pigeons and grew my own maggots. It wasn't really a great success. Most of them escaped. The maggots, that is, the pigeons didn't. It was in some way satisfying, catching up what was my best fish for a long time on my own maggots. And anyway, then the couple of lads I was knocking around with from school, we were going fishing. They got involved with a club called Silver Dace Juniors, and it met down in St George. And they told me to come along, and I wasn't really confident. I wasn't didn't have much in the way of gear, but I went along there, and it was really good. And started to mix with people. Find out there was a hell of a lot more to fishing than I knew about, and mixing with older anglers, younger anglers. There were some of the guys who just left the juniors, gone to the seniors, and then you fish the senior matches, and then I was seeing nets of fish being caught that I could only dream about. I couldn't believe it. I'd people catching bream and chub, and I'd caught say some dace, roach, and eels, and maybe a skimmer or hybrid, even in Mr. Harper, and. So I was terrible. I was useless. I didn't really have a junior. I only started fishing the juniors when I was 16, so I had no junior apprenticeship, and I had to go on a real steep learning curve to try to catch up. And I took some serious batterings. I didn't even know which way the river flowed. And the Silver Dace in the Checkers stretch of water, and one day I was fishing it, and it was going right to left, and in a junior match, and I had no idea there was a tide coming in, and about 2 hours later I looked down and my fish were basically dying in the bottom of the keep because the river gone the other way and the tide was gone out. So it's only because of a couple of seniors who were walking, who run the club, told me to put my net down further. So yeah, I said I was useless and I had a hell of a lot to learn. But mixed in with some of the older guys, I was very lucky to, and things sort of started to click over the next couple of years. And I started to realise that there was the magazines, Angler's Mail, Angling Times, buying those sort of things and reading, and then understanding the basics, names of the floats, how to shot the floats, and just slowly sort of things went on from there, and that's how I sort of got into fishing and got into match fishing. I went from Silver Dace seniors, then I was very lucky. There was a guy called Roger Amos who, rest in pieces, put together a match squad. Really took him from the Silver Dace and said, I want to create our own match squad, and it's called Bristol Amalgamation. But they had A's and B teams and that, and he said, look, you should be in the B team, but I think you've got potential. Come into the A team. You won't fish, but come and watch and learn. So I was like, what do I do? And he said, you won't probably fish for a year in the team match, and that was basically a lot of what we did then. So I went along and I thought about it. I thought, yeah, I'll do it. And a lot of the guys said to me, I wouldn't have done that, but it turned out to be the best thing I could ever have done. I walked the whole of the Winter League for one season, and I got to watch Bathampton anglers who were at the time they were the team to beat, and Bristol, I think it was Bristol Match Group and Tony Rickson, people like this, and I started to not only learn the methods, but I started to find out the pegs where fish were, and on the river, you need to know what's in your peg, what your best chances are, and that year went past very fast, but I picked up a lot of information and a lot of knowledge, and started knocking around with better match anglers, which obviously is going to help you. And when I got my chance, I stepped up into the A team and quickly became, I would say, a strong member. We then progressed on from Bristol Amalgamation. We got a sponsorship with Census, so we became Bristol Census. After that, after some years, we got involved with is it Tubertine? I forget now. Trabuco with Avon Angling. When Tony Rickson was Avon Angling, and Trabuco Avon Angling, we became. And I did leave and joined Thatcher's for a while. When Des Ship, Steve Mayo, Vic Bush were there. It was a hell of a team, really. Mark Harper, Steve Long, Ian Parsons, and I was learning more in there than I was with the old team. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Andrew Chatley, hello, he was also in the team. Mark Jeffries was my captain. Andrew Chatley and Richard Shaver in Thatcher's, and I learned loads. I was learning about canal fishing, lake fishing, improving on my river fishing, and it was really, really good. But to fish in that team, then you had to be practicing on a Saturday, fishing on a Sunday, and other people were even practicing in the week, getting time off, and I could do that. But then I got a promotion in work. I got a young family, and I was travelling abroad. I was travelling away, coming home and coming home Friday, say, and then go fishing Saturday and Sunday. It just wasn't going to work out. It's putting too much pressure on my family. And I told it was Ian Parsons and Les Lloyd at the time that I was going to leave the team. They didn't want me to leave, and they asked me to stay. But I said it wouldn't be fair because I would. If you get picked and somebody has practiced and you haven't, it's not right. And I went back to my old team, Avon Angling, and they were happy to have me back. We were all mates still. Andy Floyd was the captain at the time, I think it was, because Andy Floyd and Mark Jeffries were the main captains when I was there, and that was really good to go back with your friends. And I was fishing again with them whenever I could. And then I think it was about 2007. Avon Angling team basically broke up because a number of them didn't want to fish the rivers and the winter leagues anymore. They wanted to do individual on the commercials, and then basically I was on my own and I was not fishing with the team anymore. Andy Gard, sorry, I just saw your question. Did you keep records of matches and pegs on the Avon where fish showed up? I kept a diary since 1988, I think it was. Every single match I fished or pleasure fished, every time I pleasure fished, I wrote in a diary just where I fished, what I caught, and basically how I caught it. I've got the diaries going back to then. I stopped them when I started writing my blog, or probably about 5 years. So yeah, I did. I used to write everything but down. I found that writing things down helped you remember. I've also kept, it's back to front because the way the cameras work, but I've got a record book, and then any matches that I sort of framed in, I used to write them in there and bits and pieces. So just as, again, as a little memory jogger. So yeah, so I had a year on my own. We did a bit with Bristol Amalgamation, what was then the Amalgamated Fisheries, which was Nicola Goodine's team. Did my own thing, and then I ended up back with Thatcher's again, and you know, with Mark Harper, because basically, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet too much, I hope, but Thatcher's joined our Winter League, and they couldn't beat us. They couldn't beat Avon Angling, and they couldn't really beat Bathampton. We knew the river too well, and what was going on was the Thatcher's anglers were drawing probably a peg which had bream in, and they were even chats, and they were even Sean Bryan. They were fishing for roach, and they were catching probably say 10 pound of roach, thinking they'd done really well, but what they were doing was missing the most of the peg, and they thought they'd done really well. They come back and then they get beat by an angler who got 2 or 3 bream and a chub and some roach. And I think they realised that, and then they asked if I'd come and fish for them. Of course, I wasn't fishing for a team, so it was an easy decision in one way, but in another way, I was also thinking, oh, do I really want to get back into team fishing? Well, I did it, and yeah, it was really good. And if I can just recall, the very first Winter League match I fished for Thatcher's, which was on the Lower Avon, Swinford, Crane, Jack White's, even Mr. State, even Paul. I had we had the match, the draw, sorry, and everybody came to me, right, where have I drawn? What have I got to fish for? And I was on the M peg at Jack White's, which is an M peg, so it's obviously going to be good, but I preferred to be further up in the shallow water. But nevertheless, I was on the M peg. I was taken care of. Steve Tucker drew a peg. He was fishing for us then, and he was on a peg at Swinford, and I told him, it's a bream peg. I said, you can catch bream and chub. There's a tree opposite, willow tree opposite. You can catch bream and chub there. Nigel Evans drew a peg in the top of the Long Ashton field, when then there was a lot of roach there, and there were skimmers. And he said, I fancy it down the long rod, Tim. I remember it very well, and I said to him, Nigel, wasting your time. Ball it on the pole, ball it and fish on the pole. Do not fish the long rod. You know. Anyway, and there was obviously a few others, but those two are ones that stuck in my memory of what I told them to do. Halfway through the match, I'm not catching massive weight. You know, I've probably got 4 or 5 pound. Tux rings me up. All right, I said, how are you getting on? He said, oh, I haven't had much on the feeder. I've had to go on the pole while I've caught some roach. I reckon I could do 8 pound of roach. I said, put it down, go back on the feeder and shut the feeder out. I said, you're wasting your time. You've got to catch bream and chub in that section. You need a good weight. All right. Anyway, gets back to the results. Evening, Jamie. Gets back to the results. Nigel was come in with a massive smile on his face. He's caught 40 pound of skimmers. He said, I did what you said to him. He said, but I balled it in, caught. I had to ball it in again. I had to ball it in again. He was on a shed full of fish. I never thought he was going to catch that much ever. And Tux had 20 odd pound, and in the end he caught bream and chub on the feeder. He said, it was just like you said. And I think we won the day. And you know that. And again, they're good anglers. Nigel and Steve Tucker are fantastic anglers. They are brilliant anglers. You know. And they just needed to be put right on the pegs, and you know that's always important on most venues, but on rivers it's very important. You know, it's just making the best of your pegs, and when you go off of your own venue, I think that's why it's so hard. You know, to know what is in your peg, because we have to set our tactics out based upon what's in your peg. And generally, when you go away, and as I've been away fishing matches with the team and that, you know, you get into a team match, you get into a technique, should we say, right? Everyone's got to do this, and I always feel that, you know, I understand that, but not all venues are method venues where you have to do this set method, you know. And also, you go to matches and the locals will say, yeah, you got to do this, you got to do this. You go there, you do it, and you catch some fish, but the locals batter you because they're doing it all the time. So, whilst you've got to go down the team plan, if you're fishing a team match, I also tend to always look for what can I do on this venue that works for me, that I'm confident and I know I'm doing it to the best of my ability. So when I go away, you know, I try and do that. So it can be difficult because you've got to adapt, you've got to change. But I think those are important lessons for me for when you go away fishing or do something else. Try and think about what your strengths are. Hi Steve and hi Ben. I won't say hi to everybody if I'm answering questions, by the way, and that's not being impolite, but it may be that I can't actually remember what I was being asked, and I'll lose me train of thought. So if I haven't said hello to anyone as I'm going through, I'm not ignoring you. I'm sorry. So that's just a few. Sorry, it's probably a longer introduction than I planned, but hopefully that's just a brief introduction about me and my history and the teams I fish for. I could talk about other things that anybody wants, matches, tips, tactics, whatever you like. If you want to ask a question, if there was a question that went through and I've missed it because it goes off of the screen. Cheers again, sorry. Please send it again, and I'll happily do my best to answer it. Some legends coming on now. Malcolm King, I haven't seen him for a long time. Mike Bernstein, blimey. I mean, for those people that are joined that don't know me, anyway, I said I live in Bristol. I'm sorry, I've basically always lived in Bristol, and fished the southwest. I write my own blog. I said I got into writing a blog basically because I was getting in trouble. I was getting in trouble with the wife, and I was getting in trouble with work. Come in on a Sunday after fishing, people would ring you up, text you, and then I'd get in trouble for not talking to the wife, and get in trouble at work for talking about fishing. Right, Jamie Rich says, any stick float tips for the River Tone? Jamie, I gave you some tips and you won the match. I have never fished a stick float on the River Tone. I have once. Sorry, that's a lie. I did it once, and that was when I went down place fishing with Brian Gay. Me and Brian were teammates before Thatchers. We've stayed friends. Brian writes bits and pieces for Anglers Mail, and did it for other magazines. I always found down there, because it's shallow in some areas, but don't fish too light with a stick float, and those chub are all over the place, and if you can't control your float when you're trotting a long way down, you know, I wouldn't go too light, because if you want to set up a couple. Angling hero, Clive Branson. Who was my angling hero? When I grew up and I first had my first book on fishing, the person who was in there was a guy called Ivan Marks. I didn't even know he was, but I read that book inside out, and people say don't meet your heroes, but I did meet him on 2 occasions. Once when he was actually helping our team with information, and he was such a nice bloke, and he gave me his number and asked me to ring him back one night. Mark Jeffers, me. You're my drinking hero, Mark. And he was he was somebody that, you know, he just is so relaxed. He was so nice. I think that was what I liked about him, was not just his ability, was his approachability. And I think, you know, in angling, everybody, we all want to win in match angling, but I'd never seen the point of being nasty or angry. You know, yeah, you can have bad days. I was one of the worst for having a bad day and letting it get me down, but as I got older and things change in your life, you kind of think, well, hang on, we have good days, you got to forget the bad days and move on. Sorry a minute, I just got to go back up there. Ray Baisley, what evening, Mark? Mark Dan Gill, what's your rod of choice for crow fishing? Well, I shouldn't really say it. I should say it's a Preston, but at the end of the day, on float rods, I'm still using Titans. I use Titan 2000s. I've got 2 15-footers and a 13-footer, and that's what I use. Ray Baisley, what do you put down to your success in the poppy match? Okay. Being a jammy git, I suppose. No, the poppy match, for those who don't know, it was originally a 200 peg match. And you had to get your tickets when they were in the shops quickly, because it would sell out at 200 pegger. For those of you who don't know, it's not such a big match now, but Ray Baisley and Paul Benson are running it these days. I've done for quite a few years. Before that, it was Brian Lloyd and it all raises money for the poppy appeal. I won it first of all in 1988 on the Checker stretch at 27 pounder skimmers. My big claim to fame, and the bastards put me in the Evening Post as Terry, not Tim, because he didn't ask me name. which I thought, well, everyone took the mickey at me, as you can imagine, at the pub on the Friday night. But anyway, I remember that day well, because Glenn Bailey was watching me, and he told me I had to do something different, because I'd caught some skimmers, and then it wasn't happening. I had to chuck the feeder a different place, right across, and I caught some late on and won me the match. So I had to thank him for that. So that was a help. But then nobody had ever won this match twice, and I won it for the second time in 2001. I drew the top of checker straight, which is exactly where I want to draw. Now in a 200 peg match, if you can draw where you want to draw, that's saying something. And I fished a stick float, and I caught Dace and Roach all day long, and had £21 and won the match. Battered the bloke below me, nearly doubled his weight, and he was a guy called Bob Shepherd, who said he was gonna double my weight. So in fact, one of my mates, Mark Jeffers, had a bet with him. I beat him, and he won that one. But Ray, I mean, I won it 5 times in the end. I know I've now won it 5 times, which is amazing, really. And I mean, I love river fishing. Everyone knows that. I love all fishing. I like fishing canals. I like fishing lakes. But I started and grew up on the rivers. You've got to have a bit of luck. I mean, I'd always want to draw Swinford, but I've won it from checkers, which isn't, I've won it from Swinford. I've won it from the Crane twice. Where was the other one? Oh, I can't remember now. Oh, checkers. I won it checkers twice. And I had a second at Newbridge as well. I just think it's that time of year for me, September through to November, is the best time to fish the river. And when you fish those matches, opens, you're not fishing with your section. It's not a team match. You're fishing to win. And I think really I put my success down to knowing the pegs, Ray, and knowing what's happening at the time, and then trying to make the best of them. You can't win off every peg; it's impossible. So you've got to have a look at the draw bag. And I've had some good pegs. You don't win off bad pegs. Yeah, I put it down to drawing some good pegs, but knowing the pegs at the time, and fishing the right methods and being positive. Fishing for, as I said, I've won on bream, I've won on skimmers, I've won on roach and dace, I've won on the pole, I've won on the stick float, I've won on the waggler. I mean, and the best one I think was when I caught £61 of bream on a waggler. And I was absolutely gutted, because the bloke had fished my peg the day before, told me he caught £30 of chub out of this peg, and I thought, well, that's it, my day's ruined. But I ended up catching bream, and I remember Andy Gard and Darren Gilmer watching me that day. Actually, that was a lovely day. Paul State, remember pegs 1, 2, and 3 at Swinford, Tim, and the legend Mr. Topper. Yes, Paul. Those days, some time ago now, when the outfall was literally unbeatable. Peg 1 was above the outfall, and it used to produce chub, but some roach, you could fish the tears there. Peg 2 opposite the outfall, and 3 just below. 3's been the better one for quite a long time now. Sometimes 2 produces. 1 hasn't been there for a while. It might have been put back in. But yeah, Topper Haskins broke the match record there on the crow quill on one of these. Look, Glenn Bailey, I got yellow top floats so you can see them, because I know he's colourblind, so I got yellow top floats so Glenn can see them. Yeah, Topper caught on bread, and those were the days when I used to just basically come home from work. When I was an apprentice, I used to come home from work, cycle home, jump my bike in the garage. My mum would give me some sandwiches. I'd grab my fishing tackle and I'd walk down to Jack White's, and I'd fish Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and just fish bread and ground bait, because that's all I could afford. So I was fishing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, I remember meeting my what's my now wife. The guys will remember I actually met her, would you believe, at a fishing party. Told her, don't expect to see me on a weekend, love. I'll be fishing. If you want to go out with me, you'll never see me. I won't go shopping. I won't be going downtown with you or anything like that. The reason I mention that is tomorrow's my 25th wedding anniversary with her. So she's a great girl, and I'm very lucky. Right, I'm catching up. Hello to all the people who've joined. Clive Branson, a question for Mark Haskins. How can I draw a flyer in the poppy match, mate? Well, get into the. I always believe, and this is something I've debated before. I've always believed get into the draw queue as early as you can, because they're all in there. Good ones and the bad ones and the average ones. They're all in there. But if you're at the end, you don't know what's left. Now, there's a lot of anglers who draw right at the end. They have what's left. And some days there's a lot of flyers left in the bucket. I mean, quite often people say, well, there's still that was in there. But if you're in there at the beginning, they're all in there, mate. What I would suggest as well is find somebody who's very lucky. and ask them to draw your peg for you, Mark, because you're not lucky. Sorry. Hello, Ali. Darren Aylman. Thank you, Darren. Oh, £66 was it? Sorry. Gary Etheridge, what's your favourite method, Tim? Well, it's probably, I say it's changed. I mean, when I was younger, Garrett, I fished the waggler a hell of a lot at Newbridge. I think I perfected that method as much as I could. Me and you fished it quite different when we were Thatchers, if you remember. Gary, you fished it very, very light, shot down the line. And I used to fish it with, you know, even fours, but 6s, 8s and 10s. And I used to fish a heavier waggler than that for you when we were fishing. And but I did like the waggler because that was at Newbridge. But to be honest with you, if you could take me somewhere today and say, Tim, where would you want to go? I'd love to fish a stick float. I love the stick float. I just felt that I could control that, make it do things. I loved it when it went under, and I'd still to this day. But unfortunately, the chances of fishing a stick float are very, very limited for me on the venues that I fish. Nowadays, the waggler's still very important, but nowadays it's all about the pole, really. So my favourite method would be a stick float if I could get on it somewhere, Gary. But you have to move with the times, like you said. I think in your talk, you know, I mean, I remember being at Newbridge one day. As I said, waggler, I felt I was confident on the waggler, and I'd always do well in my section for the team. Sometimes frame if the bream didn't feature, I felt I could have a chance to frame on the waggler. But one day I was up there in a commercial house, and I'd heard about all these people balling it in. I thought, I'm not doing that. It's bloody stupid. And I drew this peg in the 60, about 65, something like that. It's really deep. And I really struggled at about £4 on the waggler. But I thought, oh, that would still be okay, because obviously it's been hard. Go down below me downstream, a guy called Steve Hutchinson weighs in £14 of roach. He balled it in. Go upstream of me. Good peg, I know, but on the I think it was a Norfolk Reeds. Vince Lunn has about 22 roach for £16, all on balling it in. And I thought, I better do something about this, because this is I'm going to be an has-been fishing a waggler all the time, so I had to go away and start learning to ball it in and perfect that method. And it is great. And the first time I ever did it was down Conham, and I put my pole out there. I just held it. I had note in my left hand and threw the balls in. I had a red maggot on the end, and I think I had about 8 balls. And as I threw the 4th one in, the float had gone under. I thought, what do I do now? I got a bite, and I got more ground bait to throw in. So I struck, and then I threw the other balls in and shipped it back and caught out a roach. I do like that. I do like that way of fishing, but give me a stick float peg any day. Chris Webster, thanks for coming on, and hello to you. Russ Peck, Brood Champs was my first real match, 200 pegger, I think. Did you ever fish / win the Brood Champs? Confession, I have never match fished the River Brew. I've never fished the Brood Champs. It always tended to clash with something else I was doing. I did fish the Brew once, pleasure fishing it. A few times actually. No, it's coming back to me now. We used to have a Christmas match there, a social match, social match, Silver Days. It was never a good affair. I think I caught an elver once, but most of the time you ended up packing up and going to the pub, and we just got back on the coach and were absolutely smashed out of our faces. And as far as I was concerned, Russ, that was the best thing to do with the Brew, was to get off your face on a few pints. So I can't say I've ever fished the River Brew properly in my life. One day I will. I'll have to do it. Ali Coles, I learnt on a quiver tip, absolutely loved it. Exactly, Ali. At the end of the day, Evening Joe, you can't tell people what's better than something else. If you like it, you like it. If you like the fish in the feeder, fish the feeder. If that's what floats your boat. I'm sure some of you remember a guy called Joe Sarkozy many years ago. Now, Joe Sarkozy was the funniest guy I ever knew. Little short, stubby guy. Used to go around with a Sigma 1 chucking a feeder out on it. How the hell the rod took it, I never know. But when he caught bream. And he did well, and he won matches. So you can catch £70 of bream at Limply Stoke. I was scratching my head thinking, how does he do this? You know, that's all he did. He just chucked the feeder out wherever he went. Winter leagues, just chucked the feeder out. Couldn't fish a float to save his life. Caught a few fish. James Cards here, what's this? When you're struggling, do you think about cider? Oh dear me, James. When I'm struggling, what do I think about cider? I probably think about a lot of things. I'm struggling. You know what it's like when you are really, really, really struggling. You cannot get a bite. The thing I'm thinking about the most is What am I going to tell the team as an excuse, as a reason why I couldn't catch? Because you know, it's not going to wear. But I'll tell you one quick one, James, about that. I remember once the Super League up Newbridge. It was in July, August time. But the river was unbelievably clear, and there was hardly any flow, and it was fishing terrible. And I was blanking. Never had a bite ball in it in. And I was in the 60s, and I couldn't get a bite. I was blanking. And I thought, well, this is where you kind of, you know, for me, use your angling brain. I thought the only thing I'm going to catch, if I'm going to catch anything today, is I'm going to catch a bream. I'm not going to catch a small fish. So I plopped the feeder over the same line. I fished the feeder over the feeder line because I hadn't had a bite on the feeder far side. And I think I was on my phone or something, texting the wife or something. So I was thinking about the wife. I was probably thinking about cider. And the next thing, I felt a little knocking on my leg. I looked down, my rod was bent round, and my butt was touching my leg. I picked it up, and I had a 5-pound bream on. Broke the blank. So I'm thinking about cider, thinking about something else. That was one day when it did work. Mark Tanner, is there a coarse fish you have not yet caught? I think there's quite a few actually, Mark. Never caught a bitterling. Don't think I've ever fished a venue where they're in. Never caught a pumpkin seed. That's another fish. I caught stone loach. Don't know if I caught spine loach when I was young. I might have done. But I've obviously caught all the sort of traditional fish that we would consider to be the fish that we want to catch. Caught grayling. Grayling was a fish I always wanted to catch, and it took me a long time to catch a grayling, and I had to go to the River Tone to do that. I was really pleased when I caught them. I've caught a few there. Never caught a big one, but yeah. No, there's obviously, you know, the local things. Bullheads. I like catching bullheads. Blimey, went all the way to the River Wye once over Clive's territory. And I think some of the guys on here might have been there, and it was coloured and flooded, and I caught a bullhead. I was the only person who went over there and caught a fish, and I caught one bullhead. It was quite funny. And then last year on the Winter League up at Swinford, I caught a bullhead up there. Not a lot else. So they tend to like me. Goodwill match, Glenn Bailey. Sorry, those matches on the brew were called the Goodwill matches. Yes, they certainly were goodwill, weren't they? There's a lot of stories we won't be telling about those matches after the event. Andy Guard, very peggy, been fishing it the last 4 years. Do you mean the KSD, Andy? I think you asked a question about the KSD. The KSD, again, it's not a venue I fish very much. I fished it with the commercial house. I missed a few because of my holidays in the past, but again, that's a funny venue. It's very clear. The fish are shouldered up because it's clear, but there's a lot of fish and they do move. So you can't give up on the KSD, I think. I know people chucking in ground bait on the whip, but loose feeding in the middle of the river with caster and hemp probably is a good thing to do. But don't necessarily expect to catch on it straight away. Sometimes with these venues, it's like the old days when I used to fish the rivers. We would fish a waggler, and I would sometimes not expect to catch very much in the first hour. You built your peg up during the day. Some of those venues like those, that's how they respond. All the fish are moving up through them. And these days, with a lot of the matches, we're expecting to catch fish straight away from the get-go. But some of these venues, you've still got to think about them, and you know, just because you're not catching straight away, don't give up. And sometimes, you know, you can look along your section and see, well, he's not catching. Then all of a sudden, an hour later, you see the fish being caught, and they're gradually coming up, and they'll come your way. It's just lucky sometimes if you're on them, but you've just got to keep going, Andy. You know, I'd say waggler, and then obviously bit of ground bait on the whip lines if you can get over the weed, and some chop worm. That's what I do. Chris Ozone, Chris Ollis, cracked the Brew Champs twice. Well done, Chris. You do like it down there, I know you do. So to be champion of the Brew Champs twice is a great achievement. Fair play to you. Ali Coles, poor Barnfield. Barn doesn't need to struggle to think about cider. Yeah, well, looking at Mr. Barnfield, the last time I saw him, I could see he likes a lot of cider. I do like cider. I'm just trying to be refined for the cameras tonight. David Blakemore, how the devil are you? Long time no see, my friend. Mark Harper, what's your... Oh, no. What's happened here? Mark Harper, what's your view on the... what's going on here? Technical terms. Can you still see me, or have I gone black? If you can still see me, can you tell me if you can still see me, guys? or have I ballsed it up? I was just scrolling up through the comments. It's gone black, has it? Right, hang on. Dee-dee-dee. I don't know how I did that. There we are, got it back. I need to be more careful where I put my finger. My mum told me that years ago. Mark Harper, what's your views on the future of team fishing? Well, first of all, my views on team fishing today is I love it. It's there's nothing better than going back after a match to the results, chatting to your mates, teammates, finding out how they caught or you caught, telling them, sharing the information, and maybe having a pint with them. So I do like that. It's really good. But obviously, the team fishing element has just got less and less. There's very little in the way of sponsorship or reward for team matches these days. You know, with the individual ones, obviously Fishermania, Riverfest, which I try and take part in, those things, they get a lot of advertisement and coverage in the newspapers, and the team fishing doesn't. You know, the team fishing is the Winter League. I mean, we have team fishing because we do the Super League still down in the southwest, which I really enjoy. I like the way they do the payout, but I think team fishing, you know, is difficult, but I'm glad we still do it. For me, as I said, I mean, I like individual matches as well, but fishing team matches, it's just got that added extra benefit of your mates. When you're there struggling, you can't give up. You got to keep trying. You know, it's not like it's an open match. I'm not going to go to that peg. You've got to do the best out of it. I always remember years ago, Mark, when my team, Bristol Census, we won the Super League when it was Division 1. We were in the Premier League, it was the first year, and we had to peg the last match, Limpy Stoke to Avencliff. We walked it, pegged it out, we walked back, and we gave every single peg, a point in that section, how many points we thought we'd get. And when we did our draw the next day, we looked at it and we said, right, peg, what peg are you on? Yeah, the peg I was on was Cyanide Straight Avencliff, and they had it down for last in the section. And I was like, oh God, no. So I would never have gone there in an open match. Never would I have gone there. And I got there, and I thought, what am I going to do? Right, stick float waggler, just feed nothing. 3 maggots, 2 casters, 2 pieces of M. And I had a guy called, what was his name? Come back to me in a minute. Mike sat behind me, and I said, what are you doing sat behind me? This is a rubbish peg. Well, I know it is. He said, but I like watching you fishing. Oh, all right then. Anyway, I had all the pegs above me in Avencliff, all the shallow fast pegs, and I was in this wide bit, and I just carried on catching tiny little fish all day long, and I ended up with about £6.14. And unbelievably, I won the section. Now, I never should have won the section off there. Obviously, some of the anglers who were on the better pegs, you know, didn't know what they were doing, and luckily for me, didn't know the water. But it was one of those days where, if I hadn't have been fishing in the team match, I would never fish that peg. I ended up 4th, picked up overall in the match, picked up in the frame off a peg that we had down for 1 point. And, you know, those sort of days, you just can't beat them. So that's my view on team fishing, Mark. The future, I hope it continues. I hope we can still stay as a team, and I hope we can still fish matches. Paul State, you going for Fisho / Riverfest this year, Tim? Yeah, I didn't do very well last year, Paul, unfortunately. I had no chance. I didn't get really a peg. I tried, but I didn't get anywhere near it. Obviously, the year before, I won my zone at Newbridge to get to the final at Shrewsbury. They've moved the final this year to the River Trent, which I do like the Trent. But I've only got a couple of qualifiers this year because I felt that I was travelling to venues, again, where I didn't really know. And I've fished them a couple of times. They're quite peggy, and, you know, it's kind of almost over at the draw. So this year I've booked in for just the 2. One on the Tone, which is the fast stretch, which I have fished once, so I said Pleasure Fishing, and it's another stretch above it, which I haven't fished before. And I've booked in for the one at Newbridge as ever. As I said, I mean, whether I do any more afterwards, if there's any available, because people drop out, you can buy tickets when they've qualified. But yeah, I'd love to get to the final again, and it really was a fantastic thing to be part of, and to be at the final. I mean, to be in the pub after on the Saturday night after the first day, talking to Dave Harrell, Sean Ashby. I mean, you know, loads of anglers. There's just 2 names off the top of my head. I just could not believe it. And Wendy was with me because she came up for the weekend, and you know, she just said, you know, I could see you were just like starstruck. You know, I just said, well, you just don't get the chance to talk to these guys, and it was a great opportunity. And they're all down to earth, you know, really nice people, especially if they've had a few beers in them. And I got to know some, you know, got to meet some good people doing it, and I'd love to be part of it again. Steve Ball, have you caught a whales on the pole? No, that goes back to Mr. Tanner's comment. I've never caught a catfish or whales at all, full stop. Whether I've actually hooked one, it's done me, I don't know, but I've never caught one, Steve. I don't think I'd like to catch one on the pole, really, but from what I've seen of it. Matt Drinkwater, would you like to see a 13-metre pole limit on rivers and lakes? No, I don't think so. But I guess I know where you're coming from. But I think as we get older, of course, I mean, I know a lot of people have got bad shoulders. Tony Rickson's one angler who's always complaining of aches and pains. And, you know, fishing 16 metres is hard. If I fish in the river, to be honest with you, Matt, I don't want to fish longer than 13 metres. That's as far as I want to go on a river anyway, personally. The only reason I'll go longer than 13 metres on the river is if the bottom is sloping away still and I can't get to a flat bottom. So yeah, I mean, I'll fish 11 or 13 if I can, and it depends on the conditions again. But I don't want to go any more than 13 on a river personally. On lakes, again, I think it's been proved by a number of people that on lakes, you know, fish will go where the feed is. Yeah, I mean, I remember years ago, we've had short pole matches on Campbell lakes, and we've caught a lot of fish. Okay, some days not as much as you would on a normal match, but other days it is if the fish want to be in close. But of course, if you're all fishing and chucking lead out in the middle of the lake, or you're fishing 16, 17 metres and feeding out there, then the fish will be out there. The fish will naturally come back in on the shorter lines as the day goes on, of course, later on these commercials, the carp will. But again, I mean, I don't go out. I've got a 16-metre pole. I don't go out and fish a 16-metre pole straight away. You know, I don't go out to the extent of my peg. People will do next to me and fish long lines. If you've got to fish shallow long and you've got somebody next to you doing it, you've probably got to do it, because you know that's going to be hard work. But no, I don't think I would see that there should be a limit on there. Otherwise, why buy a 16-metre pole, Matt? But good question. Darren Gilman, black, thank you, out, black out, man, that's good. Smile, we know you're there when you're there. That's okay. Warren Bates, put 50 pence to the metre, thank you. Hello, Andrew Trudgeon. Tammy Haybrand, looks better in red. Get lost, I'm a gashead, you know that. Gary Etheridge, what's your most memorable match? It's really hard, Gary. I mean, I've thought about this because I knew somebody would ask that question. I probably should say when I won the Winter League, Angling Times Winter League final on the River Trent, because that was a match I always wanted to win a big match. Well, when I was a kid, when I was sort of getting into the matches, I kind of set myself some targets, and I thought I want to win a local Angling Times Southwest Winter League. I want to win the Poppy match. And then I thought I want to win a real big match, you know, a Winter League final if we could get there, or a national. Everyone dreams of it, don't they? And you know, you dream of it when you're young. But it was great winning the Angling Times final on the Trent. I caught 2 perch and 2 bream, and again, that was down to practice. I knew when I drew my peg that we caught some bream in practice, and that's what I was going to fish for. But it wasn't a great match, and the team didn't do very well. So you know, it was lovely. The money was nice, and the trophy was nice, and the accolade was nice. But it wasn't memorable because the team didn't do so well. I won a Winter League semi-final on the canal. That was a great match, and the team qualified for the final then. So that was a really good match. But I drew a flyer. Everyone expected me to win. If I hadn't won, I'd have been a chump. So that was an absolute dolly of a peg, and I won it. That was up at Marlborough Way. If I think back to when I was, the first match that really got my juices going was a long time ago, and I was actually in the Intermediate National Championships in 1987, and it probably, the electricity that went through my body when we won that match afterwards was just amazing. It was on the River Trent, and Derby Railway, Derby AA Water. Now Derby AA were the team. I mean, they had amazing anglers in their team, and I wasn't a guaranteed spot on the team because this is just when I was sort of getting into my match fishing a bit better. But I got picked. I think it was a guy. I think Andy Britt was on the team, and he picked me, much to the annoyance of a couple of anglers who were dropped. And I drew this peg. I forget the name of the section where it was now. but I was the last sector or the last person to be picked up, and we'd hired a minibus and they were coming to pick me up. And I caught on a stick float and a waggler. It was going through really fast, and my peg went down to basically a weir, so I just ran out of water, so I could only trot down so far, and then it was like 6 inches deep. But I had £7.12, I think £7.8, something like that, and I got 29 points out of 35, so I was well chuffed with that. I thought that was good. And anyway, I was sat on my box waiting for the people to turn up, and the van turned up, minibus, and they said, "What you got, farmer?" Because I was called farmer at the time, or they just knew I lived on a farm. And I said, £7 odd. Now, £7 odd in most sections was rubbish. How'd you do in your section? 7th. Everybody went mad. I thought, whoa, what's happened here? Well, anyway, I got on the bus. Oh yeah, he's done this, he's done that. So bloody hell, yeah, we've done really well. We don't, and we got back to the results. Of course, it was going on. It took ages and ages. And all this time, we're wondering, have we done? We know some of the guys have done really well and won their section or second their section, things like that. But some of us, there's a couple of dippers as well, or not real bad dippers, but a bit lower down. And the guy read the results out in reverse order, and it got down to 2nd place. And I was like, and we were all just there, bag of nerves. I mean, there was people there, like Paul Benson, Kevin Winston, Mark Bailey, Martin Woodington, and they were a bag of nerves. They were just walking around, heads in their hands like this, shaking. We were all the same. And Andy Floyd, I forget. And there's lots of the guys. I got the photographs over there. Anyway, and he said it's been very close. There's only 1 point in it. And he was looking at us when he said it. And in 2nd place, Derby AA. Well, you can imagine, we just went absolutely berserk. And Derby AA looked like they'd come last because it was on their own water. We won by a point, and it was the first big win, and it was just unbelievable. It was just that feeling that I'd never had before of winning a match. And again, it wasn't the me, it was the team, and it was the fact that we'd won it, and we hadn't really been expected to win it. So that was my most memorable match. From a team perspective, Gary, when I won the Poppy match for the first time individually, that was very memorable because I'd won an Angling Times Winter League about 3 weeks before, and I'll never forget that one because I beat a guy called Nicky Isles, who was a brilliant angler, by half an ounce, and to win that. That's my first ever Winter League win. That was I wrote it down actually. That was in 1988, and then I said 3 weeks later I won the Poppy match. So people kind of then recognised me because I'd won these 2 matches, and all of a sudden there was people starting to sort of know who I was rather than being just this young spotty kid. I was 20 years age then. And then the following year, the last memorable match, Gary, was the Upper Thames Championship, and I drew a section called Clifton Handon, and never seen it before. Was told the peg above me was an absolute chub flyer, and I was on a dace peg, and I fished a waggler again, and I caught a load of dace, and then the dace stopped, and I started feeding loads of hemp, and I started catching roach, and in the end I was catching roach on hemp on the waggler because I was getting shot bites, and I weighed in £21, 12.5 ounces in this Upper Thames champs, and I got beat by 2 bream rates, and I came 3rd in the whole match, and I was chuffed with that result because there was bream pegs. The bloke at Clifton Handon on the floor one was £78 of bream. There was a 30 odd pound of bream at Eynsham, but that was a great day for me. Team didn't do so well on the day, but I really enjoyed that match. And the guy above me on the chub peg told me he caught £10 after the match, and he weighed in £21, 12 ounces, and I had half an ounce more than him. If I was a bit older, I probably would have given him a poke in the chest, but I didn't know who he was. And he looked a lot older than me, and I might have given him a heart attack. Good evening, Adam Mitchell. Colin, up the gas. Ben Matthews, where have you been? You only live round the corner, mate. Darren, TBI. Trent Bridge incident. That's when I went on the Trent. We call it the Trent Bridge incident, TBI. Matt Drinkwater. When's the book coming out, Tim? Love the Clucker's Peg write-ups. Keep them coming. Yeah, that's my pet blog, Clucker's Peg. Said I've written it for a long time. The reason it's called Clucker is because I said I lived on a farm. We had loads of chickens, and then once the guys in the Silver Days team and that sort of Bristol Amalgamation team accepted me, I wasn't called a farmer anymore. They called me Clucker, Clucker, and I was called that for years. And I'll still see people from years ago now, and the first thing I say is, "How you doing, Cluck?" They won't call me Tim. So that's why when I wrote my blog, I thought, what should I call it? So I thought I'll call it Clucker's Peg. It's my spot, my fishing place, and that's why I called it Clucker's Peg. Yeah, Matt, I wish I could write a book. You never know. I'm not sure there's enough people would be interested to read it. John Tocknell, favourite all-time peg on the Bristol Avon? Now that is a hell of a question, John. Not even one I thought about or prepared to answer. It's a toss-up between. Well, Swinford is really the place where I always want to draw because there's a lot of big fish up there. But I always seem to draw up bloody crane, and then you got fish for roach. There's some skimmers there. One peg that I've done well off of quite a few times is the first peg in the long ash tip field at the crane. Now I've won the poppy match on that peg. I won a winter league on that peg, and I framed off it a number of times. And whenever I draw it, it's like, oh yeah, I'd love to be on there. And it's peg 85. Some people even who know it say, oh, that's Tim's favourite peg. They draw it, you know. But it's not been as good recently as it used to be. It's a deep peg up there, and I think that's why there's, if you're on it, you know, there's roach in there, but there's bream. I'd rather draw it with a bit of water on it. I did also like a peg at Jack White's first one over the stile, going above the concrete steps. That's a lovely peg to fish a stick for. That's one of the few pegs you can still fish a stick float. I've drawn it twice. For a lot of years it wasn't even in. We put it in once. I pegged the match out at a commercial house and I drew it, and I caught 20 odd pound a dace off of it. Come second the match, got beat by Andy Ottaway, caught chub at Fry's. I drew it again a few years later. Thought, right, I'm going to bag up on these dace. Lost 2 fish. Thought, what the hell's going on here? Big fish. And caught 2 barbel. And then after I caught the 2 barbel, I caught £10 a dace. So that's another £20 a fish. Giving Nathaniel Johnson a bit of a lesson that day. He was below me catching chub. So yeah, that's probably my favourite pegs, John. The toss up between those two on the Lower Avon. Dave Haynes, have you ever fished the Bristol Docks? Ainer, of course I fished it. I know what you're trying to get me to say is when me and you went down there and you caught £24 a roach to my £18 of skimmers. And that was a long time ago. You had air then. Mark Harper, you've just summed up team fishing. Thanks, Mark. It's just how I feel. Darren Gilman, how would you prefer to win a section, feeder or whip? Feeder, mate. Whip's too arty-farty for me. I'm not a whip angler, really. I don't do a lot of it, so it's feeder. But I say at the end of the day, you've got to do the right thing on the right peg. And there's a lot of guys out there who are brilliant whip anglers. You know, I mean, Richard Chave always seems to catch on it. He does really well on it. There's just thinking one off the top of my head. But I've caught a lot of fish on the feeder over the years. I'm very confident on the feeder when there's water on the river, you know, there's colour in the water. I did well at Huntsville last year, the Super League. I won my section both days, although one day was on the feeder, one match was on the feeder, one match was on the long pole, catching bits. And as I said, on the river, when the river's in colour and it's flooded, I love it. A lot of people hate it, but I'm confident. And if I don't, you know, if you got to draw the right pegs, of course, you've got to have, you know, some decent depth in close. But positive fishing, I like fishing heavy lines, big hooks then, big baits. I don't mess about. It's minimum 0.16, smallest hooks are 14. I don't fish any lighter or smaller hooks than that. So a section on the feeder would do me over a whip. Andy Gard, we all get to a standard in our fishing. How can we get better? Is it practicing more, or is it down to the draw? I've got to press C more, I can't see it. Or should we brush up on our watercraft? Practice definitely helps. When I was younger, Andy, like I said, I went all the time I could. But one thing I will say is, and I miss this at the moment, I've missed this for the last few years actually, is going with somebody else. I learned by going with other people fishing. I mean travelling with them. And I used to get batterings all the time off them. Good anglers, you know. But then as this bloody tackle we've got, it's got so big nowadays, I'm on my own travelling, and there's nothing better than fishing a match, coming back, chatting with your mate in the car. You know, I used to travel with Glenn Bailey a hell of a lot in the recent years. In the past, I've travelled with Darren Gilman, you know, but all sorts of people. And there's nothing better to dissect. What did you do today? What went wrong? You know, fishing is simple in some ways, but as I say, I think you've got to get the right methods. You've got to go to a match, you know, really kind of understanding what it is you should be doing, and when you draw your peg, knowing what you're going to be doing. I think, you know, you've got to get as much information as you can, personally, and you've got to be confident, as I said, in the methods that you fish. But it's no good going to a bream peg and chucking out a waggler. It's no good going to a chub peg and fishing, a pole for roach. So those are things that are important. And then the actual match, you've got to work out as things go through. And Des Ship, for me, is one of the best people at this. Des Ship will go to a match, I think this is what's going to work today, draws his peg. And then as things go through, he can see this isn't working, I've got to do something else. Or he thinks I need to do this. So, changing your feed, Andy, what you do. A lot of our fishing now on the river is balling it in. And some days it's like, how much do I put in the balls at the start? How many balls of ground bait am I going to put in? Do I put in 10, 14, 16? Do I put in half pot of casters, half pot of them? Do I put in hardly anything, So it's all about what you think's going to happen. Then you can't know for sure. You're going to get it wrong sometimes. And we all know that people say, err on the side of caution. If you put it in, you can't take it out. And I still make mistakes. I've gone to the river sometimes, been positive and got it completely wrong. But you've got to try and weigh those situations up. So watercraft, and learning, talking with your friends, talking with your mates about how they caught and what happened. Mark Jeffries, please talk about the Southwest Team Champs Gloucester Canal. Yeah, that was a great match, Mark, wasn't it? I mean, Avon Bait were at the height of their powers, and this was the NFA. They used to run the Southwest Team Chaps and regional championships. And Avon Angling, or I think it was then, was it Avon Angling or Bristol Census then, Mark? It was a long time ago, wasn't it? I mean, we just went along to fish it. I don't think we thought we had any chance, but we fished every team match we could. And Avon Bait were out and out favourite. Billy Knott was there. And he had them on as something like 3-1. They put a massive bet on their team, and Billy put them down as like, odds-on favourite then. It was like, anyway, but we didn't know this at the time. Anyway, we fished the match. I had a bit of luck drawing a peg that I've drawn before, an area draw before, and I knew what tactics to use, and they paid off. But we got back, and our team won the match. Now, I couldn't believe it. We couldn't believe it. But the best thing was, after the match, Billy Knott came in looking at us, smiling his head off, said, "You boys have saved me an absolute fortune. Avon Bait put a massive bet on, and you've saved me a fortune." They think they actually came third, Avon Bait. So Bill then said to us, "What do you want to drink?" And basically we said, "Well, what can we have?" He said, "Whatever you want, boys. I am loaded." I've had Addy just smiling from face to ear to ear, and we could have stayed there a long time, but some of us were driving. Some guys were basically getting empty plastic bottles and put them under the beer taps and fill them. It was amazing. It was a great match because it was one of those ones where we didn't really think we would do any good, but we had Ian Spriggs fishing that team, didn't we, Mark? Mike Nichols, Rod Hill. What a great angler Rod Hill was. Shame he died far too early. Wonderful bloke and a brilliant angler. He improves our fishing so much. It was definitely Bristol Census. That was a great day, Mark. Ben Matthews, what's the first match you will fish? Now we can match fish again. The honest answer to that, Ben, is I absolutely don't know. I actually thought about it very quickly tonight. I don't know. I really don't know. The only match I currently know I am definitely fishing is the Riverfest on the Tone, if Angling Trust have got their heads in gear, their asses in gear to actually run the match in the right way. So that's the only match I'm currently booked in for, Ben. The answer is I honestly don't know. I'll just wait and see how things go at the moment. I won't rush into it, but I'm keen to go to fish a match, but I need to sort my gear out. Mark Tanner, are you going to miss Glenn Bailey's snoring this tune at Viaduct? Well, I need to explain that one, Mark. Yeah, well, every year, for quite a number of years now, there's a group of us that go to Viaduct on holiday. And now it's not very far away, but the lodges are absolutely brilliant down there. Steve Long's lodges are amazing. And obviously, we can walk up in the town, have a few beers, something to eat, fish in the day. We fish Viaduct, and we go and fish other venues as well. We do fish at Avalon. We've gone on some of Tony's Rixon's float only matches at Land's End as well. So yes, and I share a room. The lodges have 3 rooms, 2 beds, 2 single beds, I must add, and I share a room with Glenn. It's usually a race to see who gets to sleep first, because we're both bad snorers. One year I taped Glenn snoring, and the next year he taped my snoring on mobile phone. So yes, I'm not going to miss Glenn snoring, but I am definitely going to miss that holiday, because it is an absolutely fantastic week with some of my best mates. We drink far too much. We do catch a lot of fish and we have a lot of laughs. So I'm going to miss it. I'd rather be listening to his snoring than not. Paul State, if the access to the river was better, do you think the big matches would come back? I don't think the big matches would come back, Paul, but I do think, yes, well, the winter leagues and things would go, there would be people. But the problem is now, Paul, it might be too late. There's anglers like Tony Rickson. Tony Rickson was a brilliant river angler, and he probably still is. And the only reason Tony stopped going was he couldn't be asked to do the walks anymore, you know, and it is hard work. I mean, I keep myself fit. You know, I go to the gym. I used to go running, but I had knocked that on the head. I go to the gym and I keep myself fit so I can do the long walks and I can move my gear and the barrow. If we had a road running alongside, it'd be great. I mean, they've got a road running up at Staverton. I know they fish matches at Staverton, and I fished the Super League up there. It's brilliant. You park behind your peg and they get decent turnouts up there. So you get more interest, you get more people fishing, and it would allow older people, and I use the term loosely, but to carry on fishing on the rivers. Whereas today, once you get to that point where you think this is too hard and I can't face that walk, you're going to go and fish on the commercial. So yeah, I think it would help get some people back. But then there are people that would probably say, well, you know, can I afford it? Because it's a lot of bait required, and if you want to do it properly, versus maybe getting a few bags of pellets and a few tins of meat to fish on a commercial. So the answer is I don't know, but I wish they had a you know, better access port. It'd be brilliant. Glenn Bailey, Mark Tanner, will you miss sleeping on the settee? Ben Rendell, when you coming down to the Checkers? Well, Ben, yes, I mean that's the water I grew up on. As I said, as a Silver Days junior, the Checkers. Had my very first ever win as a match angler was at the Checkers on the cow drink. Yeah, I'll have to get down there with you, but you need to tell me, because last year you never told me when you had the matches down there I couldn't fish them. So I will come down there, Ben, I promise you. And maybe you have to come up and see me. I might need some work doing, Ben. Rob Jones, he's a Welsh legend. Dave Stiff, up the gas. Clive Branson, how is your health now? I believe you had some health issues that affected your fishing. Well, they affected a lot of things, Clive. I'd like to say it's water under the bridge now, but some of those scars don't heal that easily. It was coming up for 10 years actually. In August, I got diagnosed. For those who don't know, but don't make a big deal of it, I was diagnosed with cancer, and it was you know, a shock. As I said, I was fit and healthy, running, didn't smoke. Yeah, I like to drink, but it didn't affect my fishing to begin with. The treatment and the when I had the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy, for people who don't know that stuff, it doesn't really affect you to start with. You think, well, what's the big deal about? And I was still going fishing. I was fishing with Thatchers, and then poof, all of a sudden it just hits you, and it's like being run over by a truck, and you know, and depending where you get it, the tumour, depending on the treatments you get and what they're going to do for you. So mine was not in a very nice place, and it caused me quite a lot of pain in the end because of the radiotherapy. So I just literally couldn't hardly walk, and I came back from a commercial ice watch one day and said to Mark Harper, the team, I said, I can't fish anymore. It's just too much now. It's too much pain. So I was gutted, because then of course I fought it for as long as I could and just knew I had to stop. And then it was and the funny thing was, when the treatment started, it was the 20th of September, and I laughed when the oncologist told me, and he said, "What are you laughing for?" I said, "That's the day after my birthday." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I suggest you enjoy your birthday." Well, I tell you what, that shit me up. Anyway, but long story short, Clive, I had an operation then to remove the tumour in January 2011, and they told me it was going to take me 3 months to get back to work. And me being a stubborn person, I thought I'm not going to wait 3 months to get back to work. I'll get back to work before that, because you know, I don't like sitting on my ass. But I thought I'll get back fishing first of all. And you know, it was hard because they opened me up. I didn't have keyhole surgery, so all my stomach was wrecked. You know, I couldn't even sit up to get out of bed and things like that to start with. And then you have to learn to walk again. But I could walk to the sort of just about up the stairs, and that was all I could do. And I was on painkillers and stuff. So yeah, I had to do no fishing for a long time. It's very difficult. But I'll never forget the first time I was using the Avon Angling, Tony Rickson's shop, and I think it was Glenn Bailey. I said, Glenn, get me down Avon Angling. I just need to get out of the house. And Glenn came and picked me up, took me down Avon Angling. So I was really pleased to get out of the house. And Teddy said, well, when are you going to come back fishing? I said, well, it won't be yet. And anyway, I think it was 2 months. And I said, I'm going fishing. My wife was a bit worried. Glenn came and got me. He got my gear out the shed. I couldn't lift nothing up. I couldn't, you know, my muscles and my stomach were just shot and it was too painful. I could just about move things. And but yeah, it was fantastic. I went to my first match, which was one of Tony's matches, and people just carried my gear to my peg. They just said, "Yeah, we'll get you to your peg." They'd already talked about it. They let me draw first, and then they carried my gear to the peg. I think it was at what's the name of the bloody place down by the Webbington Hotel, the lakes down there. It's shut at the moment. Come on, Glenn, help me out on that lake. I forgot the name of it. I'm getting your problem. And anyway, I fished the match, and I was just happy to be fishing. You can remember that. I was just happy to be fishing, and I was on it's the place with the 2 canals, Hawthorns on the other canal, and the lake in the middle. And I was on the furthest lake, and Ship Lake. Thanks, Paul. Ship Lake Fishery. And I was on the far lake where there was all these skimmers and bream at the time. And I was just happy to be fishing. And I got battered by Martin Alexander off the next peg. He caught a load of silvers. He won the silvers. I wasn't going to fish for carp because I couldn't fish that far. And I won my section by default. So my first match back, and I won my section. And truth be told, I had a tear in my eye because, you know, there was part of me that thought I'd never fish a match again. Probably never told anybody about that, but you can imagine the thoughts that go through your mind. And it was difficult, but once you've done it once, it's like a lot of things in life, you know, you think, can I do this? But when you go and do it, it wasn't that hard. It was, and you do it again, and you do it again. And I think after all the shit I'd been through, somebody was looking down on me, Clive, and they gave me a few good draws. You know, and I said, I'll never moan about a bad peg again because, you know, there's a lot of people weren't lucky enough to get through what I got through, and you know, I got a second chance. I say I still have to live with some of the side effects of it, but it's never reoccurred. And as soon as I could, I got back to my fishing. The Thatcher's team were absolutely fantastic. I even got to fish in the Winter League final. One time with them, and they looked after me. So yeah, to be honest with you, it only brought me closer to fishing. My fishing friends, and I mean not just my close friends, I mean like everybody, people were so nice to me about it. So yeah, it was very, very, very difficult. It messed my head up a bit. I learned to deal with it at the time. I have found ways of coping with it, and fishing was a way of me thinking, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to get back out fishing. So I'm glad I had fishing as a hobby. Thank you, Chris. Paul State, what's your memories of Bill Milton? For those of you who don't know, Bill Milton was an absolute legend as far as I'm concerned. Fought for this country, ran the poppy match, got involved in the poppy match in different ways. He was, my first memories of him is beating me up, basically, boxing my ears. But no, I got on really well with him and his partner Mary. We were very fond of them. Yeah. I can't tell you the number of times Bill got me in a headlock and boxed my ears, you know, blood on my ears and that. He was such a strong guy, but so funny. Do anything for you, you know. The funniest memory I have of Bill as a nice memory, actually, which if he was here, he'd probably cuss me for it, but he should have won the Mid-Avon champs out of Bath. Bath Ford he was. And he had this, it was in flood, he had this massive slack peg. I'd caught one chub, which I caught, and the river was just colouring up. I knew I wasn't going to get another bite probably. I caught this one chub and I just couldn't get a bite, and I thought, this is it. I walked down, saw Bill, and his tip is going, boom, boom, boom. I said, Bill, you got a bite. Let it bide, he said, let it bide. I said, Bill, it's hang on the end. Anyway, another 12-ounce roach, another skimmer, and he was bagging up. And I reckon I saw him catch £12. I thought, well, he must be winning the match. Anyway, he come to he come to weighing in, his keep net was stuck. And Bill being a strong bloke, rather than muck about and try and pull the net around, he ripped the net. He lost all the fish and he weighed in £3. And I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but I laughed because he boxed my ears in the day before, so I had to run away that day from him as well, because if he'd have caught me, he'd have killed me. But no, I mean, anybody who knew Bill well knew what a lovely bloke he was, and it was a sad day when we had to go to his funeral. Glenn Bailey, got any tips on pace fishing? Yes. Don't fish it next to you, because you fish it all the time and you're too good. I did beat you on it once, I remember, because I only beat you once on it off the next peg, but I remember it, and that was down at Chiltern Trinity. But if anybody wants a tip on pace fishing, it's you. But sorry, they should ask you, because you are the pace master. There is nobody, as far as I'm concerned, better than you at fishing pace on commercials. And you've taught me a lot about it, how you fish it. It's interesting because the way that you fish it is different from a lot of people. I know. I don't think I give away any secrets. Glenn doesn't like fishing a float with any shot on it, and a lot of people say you have to fish a float with shot on it, otherwise, you know, it's your hook pulls out of your pace. Well, the way that Glenn fishes his pace, which is soft, it's not hard, it doesn't, but it does come off eventually. But Glenn doesn't worry because it's feeding his peg, and his results speak enough. But yes, I think the best thing, Glenn, is when you've got your float and it's on the 45 degree, the what was it they call it, the listing lighthouse, and it's at 45 degrees because you're a little bit over depth, and then it straightens up and shoots under like that. And yeah, or if it's just on the surface and it plops up flat, usually that's a skimmer or a bream on the end. It's a very effective way of fishing, pace fishing. I know that. It's messy. It's not my go-to starting point, but you've got to have it in your armoury. And last year I used it a few times during matches. I know Glenn's got a lot of confidence in it. Like I said before, you fish to your strengths. You fish, you know, what you're confident in. And Glenn knows pace fishing better than most, and his record stands on that. And I'm sure as anybody watching would tell you. Right, boys, that's all the questions I've got coming through so far on this. I didn't want to say too much more if I'm boring you. I will say, as I said before, I try and fish all venues. I know I'm jack of all trades, not a master of none. And a few years ago, somebody told me, you can't be successful fishing both. You know, if you want to fish you want to win, you got to fish commercials, or just commercials. Or you want to fish rivers, just do rivers. Well, I've gone past it's not about winning for me anymore. As I said, it's about fishing. It's about enjoying myself. And I like the mixture of venues. I like going fishing rivers. I love rivers. I really do. But there's a time to fish them. I like fishing the canals. Yes, Darren. I enjoy fishing Blubberman and Joker on the Cathaven Canal. And Thatcher's taught me a lot about that. Again, it's more simpler than what people think. So, I like fishing commercials. I love catching carp, you know. Did it last week. Went down Topper and caught a load. I enjoy it all. I'm not saying if I did one all the time I'd be bored of it. I don't think so, but I just like fishing everything. And to be honest with you, if I get a result, sometimes if I get a result on a commercial, especially against the standard of angler that are fishing it a lot, then I feel great about that. If I win my section, if I frame, occasionally I might win a match. You know, against I've got to have a good peg to beat some of the guys who are fishing it all the time. But you know, I'm not going to beat a Craig Evans off the next peg. You know. He's battered me, you know, and he is so good, you know, a bit like Des Ship. But you get a bit of luck, don't draw next to them, and then I got half a chance of hopefully getting somewhere. But again, I enjoy it. If I get battered, I've learned. I'll try and work out what did I do wrong. You know, don't just monk off and try and find out. You know, some people won't tell you what they did, or they might tell you what they did, but you still got to put the pieces of the puzzle together as to how that happened, because they might have fished exactly the same as you as far as you're concerned, but they haven't. Andy Guard, is fresh bait essential? I've heard people say my maggots and casters are 8 weeks old. I think fresh bait is important for roach. I know people that use old bait for chub and bream. I mean, years ago there was a bloke on the Trent, wasn't there? A very famous bloke, I forget his name now, who they used to reckon use skins and all sorts. I don't know how much truth there was in that. But to be honest with you, if I got casters, if this river's going to be flooded, I got casters, I'll keep them, and I don't mind using a week old casters in the feeder for bream. I won't use them for roach, but I don't mind. But yeah, I think with roach, I tend to find that the fresher the better. But with carp and with bigger fish, bream, and what you've got to understand is fish react differently. Not all fish are the same. This is a great book. Again, it's backwards. It's called The Complete Book of the Roach, and it tells you in there about the anatomy of fish, how the fish feed, and some fish, rely on their sight. Some fish don't rely on their sight more; they rely more on smell and touch and things like that. So, if you can understand more about the way the fish are built, then you can probably understand why certain baits work. And I've only very recently I've started reading books like this, and reading about, one of the interesting things is about the bream. I think it was more about how they work with smell. Well, people tend to use fish meal ground baits, I don't know, for bream, and of course that's very strong smelling. And I know in the past, and some of the guys on this will remember, we used to catch bream at Newbridge that were blind. I don't know why they were blind. I think it might have been to do with pollution, but they were completely blind. They were completely blind. Their eyes were completely white. But you caught them on the hook. Well, they weren't seeing your bait, so they were smelling it or they were tasting it. They were still alive, and we were talking catching good bream. So you have to know a little bit about your quarry probably to understand why certain baits are better. Noise attracting carp, for instance, and obviously pellets being fed to them, that sort of thing. Sorry, Andy, I might have answered it a long way around there, but I hope that's understandable. James Carty, when are we going out for a session? I don't assume you mean a fishing session. I assume you mean a drinking session. So I'm up for it, James, but you can have a head start on me because I can't keep up with you, mate. But I really look forward to it. I really do. Paul State, if you were told you could only fish for one last time, what peg, what method of bait would it be? Blimey, Paul. Oh, dear me. Well, if you could guarantee the fish were going to feed, I guess, because, I think I'd probably say that peg at Jack White's on the stick float, because I could catch some dace. Maybe those barbel would put in another appearance, and maybe the chub would come up from the steps where they used to be. I don't think they're there anymore, but they used to be. You know what that used to be like, Jack White steps. It was solid with chub at one time. So it'd be a stick float, and it would be maggots. There ain't no point fishing casters on there. You want to fish, as far as I'm concerned, it's unless you chuck in a load of them in to get the barb and their camping casters, is maggot. That would do me, Paul. We'd have to be in the autumn time. There'd be a waste of time in the summer. Andrew Chatley, remember the national on the name for Thatchers? Oh God, do I? We drew nearby on a practice open. Think it was an Embassy Pairs. I think we had a perch. You should just start talking fishing for hours. Good times. What a match that was. Yes, I actually remember it, chats, but I remember it better than you, and I cannot tell a lie, I blanked. I never had a bite. I actually, to this day, feel that was the worst venue I've ever fished. It just didn't fill me with any interest of fishing. It was gene clear. There was no flow, hardly at all. The only fish I saw all day long was a little jack pike, which was about 8 ounces, which was sat down by the edge of the water. As soon as I dangled a worm at it, it shot away. And I saw 2 or 3 fry plimping up the surface. I saw them 3 times during the day. I never felt like I was going to get a bite. But the worst thing was, I was in the Embassy Pairs, and I was paired with Mark Harper, and he drew a really good peg, and he came 6 overall. And if I'd have caught fish, we'd have probably caught a couple of pound. We'd have probably gone to the final of the end, which would have been great. But yeah, that was a terrible match. But we did learn something, didn't we? Because when we went on the other section, we ended up there was weed, and we'd been through the weed cut, and they cut the weed down about, I don't know, 18 inches, and you couldn't fish through the weed. And then what we worked out was if you fished over the weed with a little bit of ground bait, you could catch some fish. That was another that venue, that whole venue really was a nightmare for me. And then on the national itself, chaps, I don't know if you remember this. I was second in my section. I think it was it 90 pegs that national, and I was second. The reason I was second was because I used a team tactic. because I'd lost 7 fish on the trot, and I thought it was weed, and I realised it was a pike. And I went out with my Traverse X pole with power gum in, 10-pound braid, size 2 hook, and stuck 3 lobrums on, and jigged it up and down for 10 minutes, and I caught a 3.5-pound pike. And I walked back, and I dead ship Steve Mail, and I threw this rig at them. I said, all that practice, and all I needed was that sodding rig there to catch a pike. And they laughed their heads off. Chris Ozone. Since you mentioned Glenn and paste fishing, why does he use 2 pots? I'm not sure he still does use 2 pots. The reason he used 2 pots was because he put his paste in one pot and pellets in the other pot for feeding. And that was when he used to feed a lot of bait. I mean, he could feed a lot of bait. So yeah, he just got known as 2 pots because he didn't want to put one big pot on. He just like 2 pots on the end of his pole. But again, why did you get a nickname? You get a nickname because you're doing something good. If he was catching bugger all, nobody would have called him 2 pots, would they, for a while? So yeah, old 2 pots, paste in one pot, pellets in the other. There's a lot of people chatting to each other now. Joe McMahon, have you ever caught on the tickler? Joe, I don't even know what that is, and I think you're too young to be asking questions like that, aren't you? I hope that's a spell, auto spelling that's gone wrong or something, because I don't know what the tickler is, you twit. Chris Ozen, I've asked him the same question but never got a sensible answer. Come and give us the lowdown. Well, that's as far as I know what it is. Blimey, I've been asked a lot more questions than I thought I was going to be asked, guys. So I'm very impressed, and yeah, it's very nice of you to ask so many questions. I never thought there was that many questions to answer, really. But yeah, if there's no more questions, it's up to Gary. Etheridge has been very quiet, but maybe he's fallen asleep. He's probably drank too much beer and fallen asleep now. And Gary, sorry, Gary, your videos were excellent, mate. I really enjoyed listening to your talk and the videos you did on your memorable matches. They were really good, Gary. Am I enjoying it? Yes, I am. You probably say I don't have a problem talking, never have done. Probably talk too much, really. I mean, like a lot of us, we've got a lot of memories. Some of those things I've skirted over. Today I am not gone into the details about the matches I fished, Darren, and some of the things like how I caught. But yeah, I hello Gary, I was only joking, mate. But no, I've been very lucky. As I said, I've had some really good wins over the years, which have been pleasing for me. I'm very lucky to fish with Thatchers. By the way, here's a tip. I know Gary was good at giving tips. Well, here's my tip, guys. Get yourself a white hat. Because I tell you what, white reflects the heat, as everybody knows. Everyone has these black hats, dark hats, and your head boils. Now, if you're like me, and you've still got a lot of hair on your head, and I am in my 50s, and I've got a lot more hair on my head since the bloody lockdown, and I had a haircut. But a white hat is brilliant. I wear a white hat and a white Preston t-shirt when I'm fishing, because they keep the sun off of you. They're really good, and I would encourage you to do that. I mean, on the River Avon, somebody asked me earlier on, actually, they messaged me actually about the methods I fish on the Avon these days, and if Newbridge is somewhere easier to talk about, because Newbridge is obviously pretty much the same. There's a lot of it is the same width and the same depth. There's a few shallower pegs, but most of it's 12 foot deep. There's a few deeper pegs, I said, a few shallower pegs, and it is a place where you've got to go there and you've got to ball it in. You can't go to there and not ball it in. Sometimes it doesn't work. The early part of the season, the roach don't seem to respond very well. I think that's because in the past, once they've spawned and that, and I think there's not a lot of natural bait around. They're not even really interested in feeding. They're a bit scabby and things like that. It takes a while, but once they get on it, once the roach start feeding, you've got to ball it in. It lines them up. They're easier to catch. And if anyone knows me, I usually set up 2 or 3 rigs for the pole line. I mean, obviously that's the standard float shape that most people use. That's the old Preston PB service floats. I've still got a few of those. Wire stem. They're sort of 2 gram, 1.5 to up to, depending on the conditions. I mean, I will use up to 4 or 5 grams. I've got one there. You can't read it probably. It's backwards, but it actually says Clucker. A friend of mine, Paul Corbett, made it for me and put my name on it. I didn't ask him to. He made them for me. And then the float that I got to use a lot is this. It's a pencil float. Now, these floats here, these pencil floats, the first person I ever saw using one of these, and it was back in the 90s, was actually the gentleman who runs this, Clive Branson. And he was using a Milo float. I don't think they make any floats anymore, I don't pole floats. And I watched him fishing it, stood up fishing a pole at Newbridge, and he slaughtered me. And he was catching on this pole with this pencil float. And I went out and bought some straight away. I used them a bit, and I caught some fish on Newbridge, and I kind of forgot about them. And then probably about, I don't know, 12 years ago, they came back to my mind, and they are absolutely brilliant when there's very little float, because it's just got less resistance. You know, you're not looking to hold the bait back, you just want the float to go through. And so these are pencil float, very slim bodied, you know, 1 to 1, I mean, these are sort of 1 to 1.5 gram. That's all I use, because you need to get it down for the depth. But they can be brilliant. You can't forget, obviously, you can't forget, as I said, the waggler, especially for chublets and dace and bleak, and maybe roach later on, and also the feeder. You know, I mean, maggot feeder doesn't really feature at Newbridge. You've got to be putting a ground bait feeder in, because the bream are just so big up there. If you pick one up, it's a massive bonus, especially in a team match. But one thing people ask me, and Chris Ozen has said, what's your go-to ground bait mix of Ball in the Low Raven? Well, I mean, because I'm involved with the Prestons, the Thatchers team, Sonu baits, we get Sonu baits as well. So I've been using Sonu baits, ground baits, for quite a few years. And unfortunately, all my stuff at the minute is not with me. It's all down the farm, most of my ground baits in tubs. But we use, and the team basically use the same sort of mix really. I use the lake, I'll use generally a black one, river, and then some of this black roach, which I find really good. I don't put any fish meal in it, especially for Newbridge. You can't risk it with roach. And somebody said to me, "What mix do you use for bream?" Well, I've caught a lot of bream, not lots and lots on the pole, but I've caught a lot of odd bream on the pole over the years. And you know, if you're putting a ground bait which you think is a roach ground bait and you're catching bream on it, you know, what's the problem? So if I'm fishing a match where I'm in a team match, I'll use the exact same ground bait that I'm balling it in as I will on the feeder. Of course, I don't mix it to the same consistency. I'll take some of that out, and it's on the drier side. But you know, I want to catch fish. If I'm in a team match, I'll chuck the feeder out, and if I'm catching roach, I'm getting bites from roach and chub and perch, I'm happy as well. You know, you're building your swim up on the feeder as well after you've caught your initial fish on the balling line. So I tend to use the same ground bait. I don't very often use a different ground bait on a low clear river. As if you're fishing an individual open match, then I might use some ground bait with fish meal in. What I usually do is I've used the F1 Dark, which I like if it's clear for bream. You know, you can catch a lot of bream on the Bristol Avon when it's clear. It's amazing. You think you wouldn't catch them, but they love it when it's clear. Sometimes cold and clear. That Dark F1 is good. If there's a bit of colour in there, I'll put some Thatchers in there. Now it's back again. I did like putting Thatchers fish meal in with my other ground baits. But don't, what I would say, especially when it's flooded, don't be frightened to mix your ground bait a bit more on the heavier side. Light ground bait is just going to wash out your peg. Don't mix it too heavy, of course, because it never come out of the bloody feeder. But yeah, and you don't have to fish out that far. But that's my ground bait mix, Chris. I say I've used it for a few years now. If you see me, you know, I can show you it. It's in my bags with me in me tubs, and that's what I use. Andy Britt. My greatest memory was picking you up in the minibus on the Intermediate National. You were last to be picked up on the Trent. I remember us saying the farmer better caught some fish. You did, and we won by half a point beating Dart. But there you are. I just told that story, Andy, earlier before you joined. So you've just vindicated what I said. I didn't make it up. But yes, Kev Winston told me afterwards. You didn't tell me at the time. It was only some time later that Kev Winston said, if you caught nothing, we weren't going to pick you up. I was like, oh, that was great of you then, wasn't it? Yeah. So yeah, no, that's thanks, Andy, because as I said, that I did actually mention that at the beginning. Was probably the most memorable moment because it was the first time he won anything. Clive Branson, will you be watching Tommy Pickering on the group tomorrow? Clive, I won't be, because it's my 25th wedding anniversary, and I think my wife would do her nut if I'm sat there watching. So I'll have to watch it afterwards when it's on the page or on your YouTube. Otherwise, yes, because Tommy Pickering is a fantastic angler, like yourself, an ex-world champion. Oh, by the way, actually, it just reminds me of a little story, Clive. Do you remember, I think it was, not sure if it was the same year you were in the World Championships or the year after, you drew our team, our Bristol team, down at the Checkers in a knockout. It might have been the DFDS or a league or something like that. And it was down at Checkers. And you guys, it was Rich Candy and Clive Roberts, I remember then. And you said to us at the draw in the morning, and I wasn't fishing, I was round the bank. This is when I was, like I said to you, I was in the team, but not fishing, I was watching. And you said to us, there won't be no tides today, will there? And there everyone was like, no, there's no tide today. There's no tide today, which we didn't think there was, or at least I didn't think there was anyway. So everyone set up in the river, and then if you know the Checkers banks are very steep. And then after about half an hour, the tide started coming up, and everybody was scrambling back up the bank, trying to get the gear up the bank. It was a nightmare, and you know the Welsh boys, Clive's team, thought we'd taken the mickey out of them and we'd done it on purpose as a ruse, which we hadn't. I'm sure we hadn't. I'm sure I didn't think there was. And it was cheers, Graham. And it was really just, you know, it was just so funny. But the river fish terrible, and Clive's team got a whooping. But the funniest thing was Clive Roberts was on the peg called the carp hole. And everyone said, don't tell him he's on a carp peg. It was the one peg on the river where you could catch carp. Not loads, but if you caught one, you know, you could get them. And about 20 minutes to go, I'd been walking up and down all day long, and Clive was catching virtually nothing, Clive Roberts. And I saw him hook a fish on the whip, and it just went round and round and round this snag, and solid him up, snapped him up. And he said, oh, the chub in here are bloody big. I've lost about 3 or 4 massive chub. And I said, Clive, it's carp, it's not chub, it's carp, you're on a carp peg. And he was like, he was it, yeah. So it was one of those little things we didn't tell them. And we beat the Welsh boys then, I said, with Clive Roberts, Clive Branson, good anglers, other ones in there, and we turned them over. Whether Clive remembers it or not, I don't know, but that was a good day. But things happened that weren't planned that day, as I said, and we didn't mean to stitch them up. Cheers, Ray, thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Right, guys, unless there's any more questions, I don't want to keep you lot waiting up anymore. I don't want to bore you. I've enjoyed this, I really have done. It's very difficult talking to yourself and not actually having people talking back to you. So, yeah, but I have enjoyed answering your questions. If anybody wants to know anything else afterwards or thinks of another question, please ask me. Not a problem at all. And if ever you see me on the bank, now we can get back fishing. As I said, you know, I got no secrets. I'll tell you what I can, unless you're the next peg to me. Yes, Jamie, I hope to see you before that, but we'll see. All right, are you okay with that, Clive? Yeah, this is flown by. As I said, cheers, guys. I'm nearly drank my glass of wine now. The rest of the bottle's in the fridge. Thank you very much. Cheers, Aina. Cheers, Paul. Glenn. Been very interesting, and thanks, guys. Yeah. Cheers, Barry. Matt. It will be good to see a lot of people on the bank again. I've seen a few of my mates. Obviously, we're all socially distancing, which makes life tricky. But I guess there'll be no pounds at the moment, will there? Unless you throw a pound at somebody when you have your pound off the next. You want to have a pound with a guy next door. We have to chuck the pound at them. Right, okay, guys. I'm going to leave it there. If I talk any more, my wife and kids will probably go mad because they're all stuck in the other rooms. Okay, cheers, guys. I've enjoyed it, and take care, and I hope to see you all soon. All the best. Bye-bye.